Welcome to another RDWorks Learning Lab. Today we're going to take a bit of a diversion. Now, I've had quite a few people ask me just how I go about designing some of the things that I create. It's a very difficult question to answer because I can't really tell you. It's a really strange thought process that you have. Today I'm going to show you how I go about solving a problem, which I haven't got a solution for yet, but I've recently acquired a Nespresso machine. All these silly little coffee pods, they don't really sit very easily in that container. You have to use up cupboard space to store these things. Some of you may remember back to a project that I undertook for my wife for Christmas, and I made her a brand new knife block for a set of knives that she had for Christmas. And this is the old knife block that we dispensed with. It's got a nice rotating base on it, and if I throw that piece away, that becomes the starting point for my Nespresso coffee pod holder. Here I've also got a whole load of 1.8 or 2mm thick blanks, which I'm going to try and make use of. So we've already got a few design constraints before we start. And so what I'm going to do now is to take you through the process. I don't know what that process is because I haven't done it yet, but I'm going to take you through the process that I'm going to use to try and create this coffee pod holder. Okay, well here we are in my Cad system with the basic components that I'm going to be able to use. Here I've got a picture of the coffee pod, which I've measured accurately with my digital caliper. And on top of that I've put a piece of my 2mm acrylic, and here I've got a 160mm diameter circle which represents the rotary table that I'm planning to use. So what we've got here is basically a plan view looking down from the top, and how I imagine this is something like this. That would be an ideal position because the coffee pods do not hang outside the rotary turntable. So if the rotary table fits somewhere, then the coffee pods won't clatter into anything else. Let's just have a quick look to see how many of those I can fit round here, because it looks as though I should be able to fit 8 of them. So I'm not going to explain how my CAD system works, I'm just going to do it and you can see the end result. F8, 45 degrees, enter 8 of them. And there we go. So now I've got a pattern of 8 of them. But that's not quite going to work how I imagined it at the moment, because if we look here at the coffee pods, what I'm trying to do is to get the coffee pod sitting against a back plate, and I want to extend that back plate through to the next coffee pod, so that that back plate, when it's extended, captivates this coffee pod here. And I can't quite do that at the moment because the coffee pods are too close in to centre. So let's just back up. So we move the coffee pod and its piece of material. We'll move it down to a position like that. And now we'll try and put 8 of them in again. 45 degrees times 8. And now what we've got to do is to zoom into this area here, and all of a sudden we can see that the coffee pod corner is clear. We'll just measure a horizontal dimension from the centre line there to where it's going to hit that next coffee pod. That's a dimension of 35.5. So I think what we'll do, we will make this dimension here 35mm, and the quickest way to deal with this is to back up and get rid of everything, and then we'll put an offset of 35mm. Right, so that's now one of the main elements. When I say designed, we've got a long way to go yet, but that's the fundamental design principle sorted. So what we can now do is do a repeat of the rotate. Well, there's our geometry sorted out. we've got the intersecting plates, and when I say intersecting, if you hold your hands up with your fingers apart and then put them together, they will interlink, and that is effectively what I'm going to try and achieve on these corners. So now what we need is a view from the front. So start off with a line. It's going to be a horizontal line, and I'm going to draw a line across the top here parallel to this one, 2 millimeters down, because that's the top plate that I've got to have on. And then we're going to try and fit probably 6 coffee pods into the height of the material that I've got available to me. The coffee pod size is 37.1, and we'll position that circle just here for a moment. And then we'll reposition that circle. We'll move that circle from its known position so that the intersect there goes to that intersect there. There we go. So now we've moved that to just the top of the stand, and now we're going to put 6 of them in. And there we go. And so now we can draw, let's copy that line. So we'll copy both of those lines. And we'll copy them from the intersect at the top there to the intersect at the bottom here. That's defined the height of the unit. And now what we've got to do is work out what shape we're going to see on the front here to get these plates to overlap. So to do that, I'm going to copy that line there, from there to there and there. Alright, so that's the width of, let's extend that. So that's the width of one of our panels. Now the other thing that we need to do is to work out how we're going to overlap these. I'm going to copy this line from here to the intersect of that line there and the intersect of that line there. And I've got an idea I might need, while I'm here, that intersect and that intersect. Let me just have a think for a second. Unfortunately, you can't see what's in my mind. I can imagine what these pieces are going to finish up looking like, whereas at the moment all you can see is a few lines on a piece of paper. And I'm sorry, but that's the nature of design. It happens in the head, not on paper. What you see on paper is some sort of magic transference from the image that's in the mind. And that's why it's going to be so difficult to show you guys exactly how this process carries on. I think the best thing to do is to start drawing a few lines on here, and then it will probably start to become a little bit clearer what I'm seeing in my mind. Now what I need to do is to make sure I can get the coffee pod out at the bottom. So to do that, what I'm going to do is draw a line halfway across the coffee pod so that it gets 50% captivated, and then hopefully there'll be enough clearance at the bottom for it to come out, but it won't naturally fall out. That's where the bottom of my fingers have got to finish. And from here onwards, we'll start choosing some random numbers, and I think I'll choose a nice round number, 10 millimeters. And I'll put some offsets in. I've got to do a bit of trimming. I don't know how many of these lines I need, but we'll put them all up for trimming. And we certainly don't need any of these here, so we can trim all these off. So we can trim that off. Now there's my first finger. So let's just delete everything else for No, while I'm here, what I really ought to do as well is to turn this into a rectangle. So we'll select a rectangle there, and I will put a rectangle over that particular spot there. Now I'm going to delete these lines. And in fact I'm going to delete that one, and that one as well. And now I'm going to join to make into a single feature that little piece there. Yes, it's now one feature. So we copy that, and we copy this from an end point here to an end point here, to an end point there, to an end point there. So we're copying all these features up like this. Now hopefully you can begin to see what was in my mind. These fingers plug through these holes. What I'm going to do now is put some little fixing tags on the top and bottom. So I'm going to use 4mm, I think, for the length of a fixing tag, and we'll do something else I've forgotten as well. When this is the center line, if you remember, of the coffee pod, and what I've got here has got a continuous edge that goes all the way down. Well, I can't have that continuous edge all the way down because I want the coffee pod to come out. So I need a line across there at the center line. So I've got to, first of all, let me trim that. There we go. And now we'll do some trimming. Right, we'll trim that, we'll trim that. Let's take a look at the top here, and we'll do some trimming up the top as well. And there we are. So I do believe that that's the vertical panel finished. So let's just move, we'll do a copy of that. That's the easiest thing to do. We'll do a copy of that. We'll move it across there. And then we'll do a delete on the center line, and we'll do a delete on, let's join everything to start with, and then it won't fall apart. And now I can do a delete on just the circles, and there's our vertical panel. We need 8 of those, and they will all plug together. So what we've now got to do is to organize the top and the bottom plate that this will plug into. Right, so what I'm now going to do is to put a circle in for our top and bottom plate, and I'm going to make it from the center of this circle, and I'm going to bring it out so that it just touches the extremity of our vertical plates, which will be just that corner there. Okay, so that's the size of the base plate that I'm going to use. Well, I'm going to copy that line, and I'm going to stick that onto the end of that tab there. Oops. From F6 to F6, F6, oops, to F6 and F6. So what I've now done, I've projected those tags up onto here, which is the back plate. And what I'm now going to do is to put rectangles in where those intersects are. So there's a rectangle going in there, and there's a rectangle going in there, which represents the slot in which those tabs are going to fit. So now I can delete these lines, and what I'm actually left with is the squares. So to make this top plate is really simple, because all I've got to do is to copy. I'm just going to copy the outer diameter and those 2 squares, and I'm going to move that out of the way so that we can see what we've got. I'm now going to rotate that pattern of holes about the center of that circle, by 45 degrees and 8 copies. And there we go. It's as simple as that. One of the other things that I can foresee, I can't leave this as it is, because if we take a look here, how am I going to get my coffee pod in if this piece of material here is in the way? I probably can't. So consequently, I'm going to have to chop some of this material away so that it allows my coffee pod to go into the top of the slot and probably come out the bottom of the slot as well. Right, here's the plan. We'll put a line across here and here, and we'll then put an offset of about 3 millimeters from there. And now what I'm going to do is choose an arc, and I'm going to start, this is a 3-point arc, I'm going to start the first point at the intersect between that, and then I'll go to the center of that line, and then I'm going to go to the intersect of that line and there. And now I can delete this information here because we don't need that anymore. Replicate it 8 times around the edge of the circle. So we do a rotate on that feature from the center by 45 degrees and 8 copies. And I'll put a trim around the whole lot, and we'll just trim these excess pieces away. The bottom plate is going to be an exact copy of this top plate with one exception. So first of all, let's do a copy. I've got to go away and measure the holes, the fixing holes in the base plate, because I've noticed that those fixing holes they're not in the center. They're in a funny position. So I'll go away and measure them and pop them onto the drawing here. Okay, so there's my holes, and as you can see, they're well off center, but it doesn't matter, provided it's not interfering with these vertical panels, which these holes are getting close to it, but they're not. So let's just step back for a second, and I do believe that we are now virtually finished. In fact, we are finished. Right, so all we've now got to do is to send that off to a Dxf file, and we can start programming it up in RDWorks. Okay, well here we are in RDWorks with our file imported. And the first thing we're going to do is to throw these two away, because what we need to do is to make a little program for this, because I've got to run this several times. What I'm going to do is use my standard programming technique, which is to group all my holes together into a group, and then I've got the outside which I can put into another group. Now there's only 2 features on this, but at least it means I get control of how they're cut. So we'll now go to Cut, Edit, Properties, and what I can do is select the holes and put them in the list first, and then the outside will go into the list second. Done. It's as simple as that. We'll just check the speed, and the speed is totally wrong. We need that round around about 25 millimeters a second, and we can have a power of about 50%, which is about 60 watts. Okay, so I'll save that to a memory stick, then we'll delete this one, and we'll re-import the file again, and this time we will remove the bit that we've just programmed, and we'll program the other 2 pieces. Again, what we're going to do is to group the holes together. Just the holes have turned red, as you notice, and we'll put those into a group. Then we'll put the outside shape into another group, and then we'll go over to this one and we'll put just the holes into a group and the outside shape into a group. And now we'll go up here to our Edit Cut Properties, and we can choose the holes to be cut first, then the outside shape to be cut next, then the holes to be cut next, and then finally the last outside shape. Done. Okay, so we just save those to a file, that as well, to a U file, and we'll meet up at the machine. Okay, and now we're going to have a go at cutting the discs. First thing we do is we're going to put these screws through, but we're not actually going to fix it down at the moment. At least those holes all line up, and well, more or less. That's not going to come off there now anyway. Yeah, that's more or less central. Okay, how do we put these together? One. Two. That was a little bit of a challenge, but we got it all in. Now we're going to get the top on. That's an even bigger challenge. Can't put these in one at a time. They are popping in, which is good news. And there we are, it's all nice and stable. Do they go in? Yes. Do they come out? No. Not easily. Well, yeah, I suppose they do, because it flexes. Yeah, that's probably just about right, actually. Look, you just flex them out. Yeah, they just pop out of the bottom. They're actually very nice. They just require just a little bit of force to get them out. Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. So all I've got to do now is just sort of put a little bead of glue around here. Well, this wasn't a particularly difficult project, but it's been an interesting project, and I hope that it's been beneficial for those guys that requested to see just how a product was produced.